Hello, and thank you for joining us on Ask a Historian. I'm Matthew Wilkinson, historian with Heritage Mississauga. And first and foremost, we wish you all the very best for 2021. Each week, we invite you to send in your questions, and we'll explore the fascinating history of the city of Mississauga together. Are there things that you're curious about? Are there people or events from our collective past that you'd like to explore? Have you ever wondered about the origin or meaning of place names or road names on our landscape? We look forward to exploring the story of the city of Mississauga with you. This week's episode of Ask a Historian focuses on a few inquiries we received into the origin of place names. In a fascinating book, and I do highly recommend it, is Looking for Old Ontario by Thomas McElwraith. There is a fascinating chapter on here about the naming of place names throughout our landscape. One of the sentences from there references that names are the deepest expression of a commitment to a place. So when we look at the place names of a place, we look at the names that, each name on our landscape, whether it's a road or a park or an interpretive plaque that commemorates or remembers something that happened or people that once lived there, each really is a signature on the landscape over time, and they're not easily changed. The names become ingrained, both locally and abroad, as reference points, as descriptions, and as community identity. Many of our street names in Mississauga long predate the formation of the city itself, and is named by those or for those who came before us and helped to lay down the foundation and the earliest building blocks of our community. After all, people did not and do not choose to name things after things that they want to forget. Thank you, Rosalind, for your question. Shaw Drive in Port Credit is named after James Robinson Shaw, who lived between 1811 and 1907. The Shaw family under James Robinson Shaw, originally had a farm in this area of what would become known as Shaw Drive later on. James Robinson Shaw himself was born, like I said, in 1811 in Westchester, New York. His parents were William Shaw and Anne Robinson, and the family moved to the Port Credit area around 1816, where they acquired a 100-acre land grant or a farm property on the north side of Lakeshore Road in the vicinity of where Shaw Drive is today. James Robinson Shaw married Jane Thompson, and together they had one son and 6 daughters. Their children were William, Hannah, Emily, Ida, Alice, Jessie, and Rosetta. While living on the farm, James hired farmhands to do the farm labor on the property, as his particular expertise was as a wheelwright and a blacksmith. And he's known there's quite a few references to James Robinson Shaw, the blacksmith in Port Credit. Later, the family moved from the farm property to a town lot on Joseph Street. Joseph Street is now known as Mississauga Road South in Port Credit, where they also operated a small general store on Lakeshore Road, just on the west side of the Credit River. James attended First Methodist Church, later known as First United Church, and was an active member in the congregation and one of the trustees. In the community of Port Credit, before there was a local doctor, James was also referred to as a healer, but also as quite a character, a storyteller, and just a person who was full of vim and vigor in the community himself. Before Port Credit again had its first doctor, James was known for bleeding out illnesses and pulling teeth, kind of a self-fashioned dentist, if you will, with instruments that he fashioned himself. He was a blacksmith, after all. He was also, for a time, viewed as the local veterinarian as well. So quite a collection of skills for James Robinson Shaw. So again, Shaw Drive, named after James Robinson Shaw, a well-respected and well-known Port Credit resident who lived between 1811 and 1907. So thank you, Rosalind, for your question. Thank you, David, for your question on Ben McCree Drive. Ben McCree Drive in Port Credit is named in reference to the former estate of Andrew Hoberlin, or A.M. Hoberlin. The name itself is of Scottish origin and believed to translate to meaning within my heart. And it was actually the name given to the estate property, the summer estate property of the Hoberland family. And so Ben McCree was a name selected by, in its early days by the Hoberland family, who owned property here between 1910 and 1922. So a very short period of time in the overall history of the property. Andrew Hoberland was a wealthy landowner in Port Credit. They resided here, it's believed, largely in the summer months, while living in Toronto in the majority of the year. And he was the owner of a significant and prominent business in Toronto known as the House of Hoberland, which was a major men's closure. Their home here in Port Credit, their summer home, was built between 1910 and 1914 and designed by the prominent Toronto architect Edward James Lennox, whose other works include Casa Loma, Old Toronto City Hall, and numerous other significant residential structures in Toronto. The Hoberlands sold their estate here in Port Credit in 1922, and the house remains as a private family home to this day, referred to sometime later as Eden House. The estate itself, the large property around the former Hoberland estate, was later subdivided into the residential area you see today, and the road name Ben McCree takes its name in reference to the former estate name. Andrew Hoberland and his wife Alicia were among the founders of the Peel Memorial Hospital in Brampton, and were widely known and respected for their work among wounded veterans from the First World War. Their Port Credit home, again at the time known as Ben McCree, was also open as a home for wounded veterans to receive medical care and convalescence on their return from the war overseas. They were members of the Loyola Guild and the Port Credit Catholic League, which both focused on supporting soldiers in the war effort overseas through donations and fundraising efforts at home. They were both, Andrew and Alicia were life members of the Canadian Red Cross, of the Port Credit IODE, the Imperial Order of the Daughters of the Empire, which was a women's charitable and educational organization, and they were founding members of the Navy League of Canada. Among the Hoberlands' most significant connections to the First World War was the establishment of a trust fund called Justice for Seamen and Airmen Decency and Chivalry Trust. That's a little bit of a mouthful to say. And it was set up to provide income for wounded seamen and airmen returning from the war and who were unable to work as a result of injuries sustained during service. In September of 1918, the trust had raised $380,000. That's roughly equivalent to $7 million in today's money, one of the largest private funds ever raised in Canada at that time, all solicited through private donations. One of the significant events that took place on the property, the estate property before subdivision, happened on August 4th of 1919, when the Hoberlands hosted the Return Man's Parade and Victory Party at Ben McCree for returning soldiers of the First World War. So again, Ben McCree Drive, named after the former Ben McCree estate of A.M. Hoberland. And again, the house resides today, a private family home, and the subdivided area, the road name recalls that early association to the estate property of the Hoberland family. So again, David, thank you for your question. Thank you, Ryland, for your question on Wolfdale Road. Most of us have likely traveled along the course of Wolfdale Road at some point in our time here in the city of Mississauga. Wolfdale Road is a historic route of travel that was originally surveyed in as part of the 1806 cadastral survey of what was known as the Old Survey of Toronto Township. And it was given, as part of that survey, it was originally given the numerical designation of Second Line West. Its modern name, Wolfdale Road, is named in reference to the Wolf family, who operated a farm along its route, along the route of what is now Wolfdale Road, for several generations. The Wolf family traces, in this area anyways, traces its ancestry back to Peter Wolf, who lived between 1774 and 1846, who received a land grant here in historic Mississauga in 1808, but not along Wolfdale Road. It was a little distance away from that. Peter Wolf was a militia veteran of the War of 1812, and it was his son John Wolf, who lived between 1804 and 1880, who purchased land along what is now Wolfdale Road, or then known as Second Line West, in 1835. And over the following years, shortly after the 1835 purchase, he acquired several other land parcels nearby. So it's the name association with the area traces to John Wolf. And John and his wife Elizabeth would raise 8 children on their family farm here along Second Line West, now known as Wolfdale Road again. And the 8 children were called Peter, Susanna, Samuel, David, George, Martha, Nancy, and John Jr. Sons Samuel, George, and John Jr. would also all establish farms in the vicinity around Wolfdale Road. Samuel's son Joseph Wolf, who lived between 1863 and 1931, continued to farm along Wolfdale Road into the 1930s. The former Wolf farmhouse, which was built around 1910, and this was Joseph's farmhouse, survives today as a commercial building along Wolfdale Road. Again, Wolfdale Road, an older road named for an old family, formerly known as Second Line West, Wolfdale Road, carrying the name of Samuel Wolf's farm, which was known as Wolfdale. So again, thank you, Ryland, for the question, and look forward to exploring the story of place names in the city of Mississauga with you. Thank you for joining us once again on Ask a Historian with Heritage Mississauga, and please keep the questions coming in, and we'll have fun exploring the fascinating story of the city of Mississauga with you. There are so many things we can explore and talk about each week, and really do look forward to hearing from you and seeing those questions coming in. So thank you, and we will see you next week.